In this lesson, we'll take a look at some of the ways that we can build NURBS objects. So again, starting with a blank scene, let's say we now want to create something using NURBS. Now, there are just a couple of ways that we can do this. We could take a primitive object and convert it into a NURBS surface, just as we would convert something into an editable poly. Okay, we could take a sphere, draw it out, right-click on the sphere and say Convert to NURBS, and then you have a NURBS surface that you can modify. Okay, so that's one way to do it. We could also go to Create, and instead of creating a standard primitive, we could create a NURBS surface. And there's only two options here for this. We can create a point surface or a CV surface. Okay, we can also use curves to create specific looks for our model. So in this case, I'm going to hit Alt-W, and then let's just go to our left wireframe. Left viewport, that is. And so I want to actually go to Create, and instead of creating geometry, I want to go up here and create shapes, and instead of splines, we'll choose NURBS curves. So here we have the option for creating a point curve and a CV curve. A CV curve will have those points off of the surface as we looked at. And so I'm just going to come in, and let me actually go back and just go right in the center. And I'm going to come up right along the axis, and I'm just going to draw a curve. So clicking, we'll add the CV, so add maybe 3 points here, one in the middle, and then I can right click to exit that, and there's the curve, which we can now go to Modify. Okay, and so now instead of a NURBS surface, we have a NURBS curve. We can also access sub-objects of this NURBS curve. So opening this up, we have the curve itself, which we can select, or the curve CVs. So the CVs, if I select those, I can actually move those around, and we can see how that curve is modified based on my CV selection. So I'll just create something like that. Okay, hitting Alt-W, we'll go back to perspective view. Okay, and so there is our NURBS curve. And we can actually use this curve to create geometry here. So there are a couple of ways that we can do this. We can go down to Create Surfaces in the rollout, and there are some options here for different types of surfaces that we can create. There's also a little button, if we kind of move up here, the NURBS Creation Toolbox. And so if I go ahead and click on this, I get a number of options for points, curves, and also surfaces. Okay, and these are a lot of different ways that we can create surfaces using a NURBS curve. In this case, I want to create geometry by kind of rotating this around a specific axis. And so to do that, I'm going to choose to create a lathe surface. So I'll activate lathe surface. You can see the options over here. To actually create the surface, I need to hover over the actual curve, and you can see it turns blue, and I'll just click on that curve there. Now you can see that it's not doing exactly what we want. In this case, it's rotating around in this direction. Okay, we can change the degrees here. The degrees are fine. We want to actually change the direction. Okay, so that's Y, there's X, there's Z. So the direction we want is going to be the X direction. So we want it to rotate around this, but the gizmo there is not located in the correct spot. So I want to actually move that down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the surface, and then I can actually move this down. Actually grab it here, and I'm going to move it all the way down here. Okay, pretty much to the center. Now you can see how it's black on the outside and it's green on the inside. Well, what that means is the surface is flipped around, and so we can change that and fix that very quickly. We're just going into the surface, and we're going to come down here under rollout, and this is under the surface common. Okay, we can say flip normals, so that will flip it inside out. So now the inside is the inside and the outside is the outside, so that we can see it. So what's happened is it's taken our NURBS curve, it's rotated around this axis, wherever this axis happens to be, and it's created geometry as it's gone. So in this case, we're able to create this sort of a shell shape, okay, using a NURBS curve. Okay, so that's a quick way at looking at using curves to create NURBS objects. Keep in mind there's also a very powerful method of creation that we won't really get into, but using splines is going to be a great way to also, and that is kind of a cross between your NURBS and your polygons. And here you can see that we can create some splines just by bringing this in here. Okay, so we've got a circle here, and if we access this, you can see that it's a primitive circle, which we can change the radius. We can convert this to an editable spline, which gives access to the subobjects, which in this case the vertex, which has the handles that we can modify. Okay, we can also choose segments and the actual spline itself. Okay, and to create geometry based on this, we could just add a modifier if we wanted to. Let's say a bevel modifier. Okay, and this bevel modifier will actually create geometry based on that simple spline. We can change the surface, the number of segments. We can give it curved sides there, make it nice and curved. Okay, and so we can change the values here as far as the levels go to create geometry based on that. So your splines are going to be something that is very powerful as well. You won't have access to the NURBS creation, but you'll be able to create different types of surfaces with those. And again, we covered those in many of our training courses, including the motorcycle modeling techniques. There's a lot of spline-based modeling within that as well. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is modeling with the smoothing in mind. So the subdivision type surfaces with mesh smooth and the NURBS subdivision that we can use. So we'll take a look at some of the options we have for those methods in the next lesson.